I am the Philosophical Bachelor, and today I want to talk about Inuyashiki and the question, if given godlike power, what would you do with it? Inuyashiki is an epic tale of good versus evil. The best of such tales provoke soul-searching, reflection and rumination over the question, what would you do if you were in that situation? Its plot device is simple. The two main characters, one an old geezer, the other a teenager, were in a park one night when an alien spaceship appeared and accidentally killed them. The aliens seemingly didn't mean to do that, and so they recreated their victims' bodies with robotic parts. The two men appear outwardly unchanged, and as we shall see, their fundamental characters and personalities remained, except they now have superpowers. They can fly, they can kill, they cannot be killed, they can self-heal and heal others, though they cannot bring back the dead. So far, so cliched. Before going further, I want to say three things briefly. This article is based on the anime series made in 2017, which I enjoyed. The anime is based on a manga, Japanese for comic book, which was published first in 2014, which I have not read. A live-action movie was also made, which premiered in 2018. Generally, I prefer animation to live-action, since a lot can be done for the screen that is difficult to replicate in real life, even with the most fantastic special effects. However, the main reason for my preference is that I admire the beauty of the artwork and the effort and dedication that it must take to capture all the details to make a scene appear realistic. This is, however, not a review of either show, though the aspects I talk about will come from the anime series since I saw that first. Instead, it is a thoughtful opinion piece about choices, which is fleshed out in the story of Inuyashiki. I will talk about its plot, but not in a way that it will spoil your enjoyment of the show, any more than watching its trailer would do. By the way, I have put a link of the animes and movies trailer in the description. Secondly, you may be wondering if my video will contain images of the show. Unfortunately not, since copyright is a thing. Yes, even movie posters are copyrighted and hence owned by its producers. You may be wondering how many YouTube videos contain such images, if not outright videos taken from films which they do not own the copyright to, nor have permission to use. And I recognize that such images indeed could make my videos more attractive, but to avoid unnecessary trouble, I have not used any of the show's images or videos. Besides, the ideas in my video can be understood without relying on these images. It is not perfect, but is ethically correct. Instead, I have used royalty-free graphics which I have credited in the description of Japan, in case you need something to look at while listening. I hope you have come to my channel for the ideas and not the visuals. Back to what I was saying. Some of my favorite science fiction stories rely on a single premise, which is far-fetched but has to be accepted in order to make sense of the rest of the story, while some of the ones I despise rely on a multitude of Deus Ex Machina. Here's looking at you, Avengers series, which strikes me as lazy writing and is often bombastic. After that single premise is accepted, the rest of the plot turns on real-life cause and effect, where actions have their implications and consequences the way they do in real life, making the plot lines plausible should that single premise ever become true. This is one of the reasons why good science fiction stories can move us. They are not so out of this world that we cannot even empathize or understand the motives of the characters, not so detached from our reality that it will become incomprehensible. Fiction must avoid stretching the fantasy too thin to the point that the audience becomes alienated. If you can accept Inuyashiki's single premise, the rest of the show manages to keep it real. As you may be wondering by now, why am I even talking about it? Since you came to the Philosophical Bachelor for some philosophizing. Where is the philosophy? Show me the philosophy. Well, here goes. What makes Inuyashiki stand out from the endless stream of superhero films is that its focus isn't on the big bangs, explosions and action. Not to say that there aren't any. There are plenty of action sequences which are well done. Even better, they fit with the story and are mostly not gratuitous. But they are not the main story. Inuyashiki is at its heart a morality tale, and this is where I think it can get philosophical for introspective viewers. It is a thought experiment where, if you are given godlike powers, what will you do with it? In the story, one chose to do as much good as he can, while one chose to do as much evil as he can. Both were shaped by their life experiences. The old man, who is the eponymous hero of the show, was never a strong fellow, never outstanding, and never popular. Neither is he really even that old. In his 50s, he looks older than he actually is. Past his prime, worn out by life, and not in the best of health. He is your everyman, in Japan represented by the salaryman who endures long hours in the office, earns enough to sustain himself and his small family of a son and a daughter, both still in school. He is by no means well off and can't afford to be careless with money. His son gets bullied, and the bullies laugh at how little money they can rip off the kid. Yes, the scriptwriters want us to think of the Inuyashikis as humble, ordinary folks. Mr. Inuyashiki may sigh after a long, difficult day at work, but he is not angry and bitter at his lot in life. He accepts his fate, which does have some simple bittersweet pleasures the audience will easily recognize, such as the happiness and misery of coming home to his wife, his kids, and his dog, which he adopted when he found it abandoned. As you can imagine, when he received his powers, he was bewildered. But as he realized what he can do, his thoughts turned to how he can use it to help people, to heal the sick and to rescue the injured. Though not by any stretch of the imagination wealthy, he did not exploit his powers to enrich himself. He could have, as the other protagonists will do. Instead, he rescued people from burning houses, goes to hospitals to heal the sick, and mostly went along his usual way, to work and then home. The teenager, Hiro Shishigami, also came from a humble background. In terms of his material means, he is not that different from Mr. Inuyashiki. His parents are divorced, but he has a caring mother. His father has remarried and he enjoys a good relationship with both parents. He is also not rich, he does not belong to the popular crowd at school, and he enjoys reading comic books, a pastime a lot of Japanese people have, both adult and children. He does not care much for strangers. He professes that he will not concern himself if they died, but he does care for a few people like his best friend, Endo, his family, and later a girlfriend. He took his disdain to new heights after he realized what he could do with his newfound powers, entering homes of strangers and killing them with impunity, with a simple gun action with his fingers, while making the sound of a shotgun. Bang. If he needed money, he could use his powers to get ATM machines to give him money, or modify his bank account on the internet by adding some zeros to his balance. Feeding his bloodlust, he began more and more to terrorize the people. The forces of authority, such as the government and its instruments, the police and military, were unable to stop him. Finally, Mr. Inuyashiki was the only one who, because he was like him, could possibly stop him. Similar bodily, but yet very different mentally. Such as the symmetry and dissymmetry, like the yin and the yang. Inuyashiki is one in a long line of such stories. Many of you may be familiar with The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells, which he wrote in 1897, and fans of Japanese manga and anime will know Death Note, first published in 2003. They all ask, if given great power, what would one do? Plato, more than 2,300 years prior, told us about the ring of Gyges. In Book 2 of the Republic, a shepherd named Gyges found a ring that made him invisible, hence allowing him to carry out actions without fear of capture. He killed the king, married the queen, and took over the kingdom. The question posed by the tale was, if people can get away with being unjust, why would they care to be just, since it seems to be more profitable to be unjust? Instead, they will want to appear just, but in fact they are terribly unjust, which is itself an injustice, since they are thought to be good by others when in fact they are bad. Plato does not directly answer the question, but with this thought in the background tries to construct an ideal state, which is why that book is called The Republic. When given the power, will we be prepared to do the right thing and act in a moral way? Another thinker, this time from the medieval period, may have some helpful ideas on this. Here is William of Ockham, more famously known for the razor named after him, which advocates parsimony in theories, than his ethical ideas. He talks about degrees of virtue. The basic degree of virtue we all possess is exhibited when we occasionally do random good deeds. Not that the deeds were not good or worth doing, but they are motivated by arbitrary factors, such as when one gives money to a beggar just because one was in a pleasant mood that day. On a different day, if one was in a foul mood, one might instead act abusively towards that same beggar, which means that virtuous act was not really virtuous at all. You will recognize this in Shishigami. The other degrees are more grounded in true virtue, since the acts that result are directed by right reason. With proper reasoning driving actions, there is a greater commitment towards acting consistently in a virtuous way and not simply be driven by random whims. In addition, Ockham thinks that all virtues are connected, in the sense that lacking one virtue can undermine the virtuous character of a person. There remains the question, how can some virtues be developed if one never had the opportunity to exercise that virtue? This ties back to Inuyashiki, since how would one know how to act when given the power if one never had the experience of such power before? Ockham will say that since one is virtuous only through the use of proper reason to figure out what the right thing to do is, then that same faculty of reason will guide that person to act virtuously when one is in a novel situation that demands moral action. How then can we nurture our powers of reason so that we can act virtuously? To answer this question, we once again have to head back in time from Ockham to ancient Greece. Aristotle, a student of Plato, proposes an ethics centered on virtue. According to virtue ethics, what constitutes a virtuous act is simply how a virtuous person would act. Sounds circular? Not really. How can such a virtuous person be developed? It is through training, where people are taught what would be the right thing to do, and by frequently doing the right thing, foster the habit of acting virtuously, even in novel situations. This notion is akin to the proper upbringing we speak of nowadays. Though I propose that we can understand this more broadly since we are continually learning and growing as people. In fact, to be able to learn means that people are able to change, though sometimes for the worse and sometimes for better. As our lives unfold, we respond sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ones, but we can still change. As Natasha Bedingfield sings, "Today is where your book begins, the rest is still unwritten." If we want to be good people, we need to practice being good through the various situations that life throws us, so that when the time comes when it really matters, we are prepared. It is like training your fighting chops, so that when it needs to be deployed, you can act fluidly and almost by reflex. To conclude, I want to talk about what to me was an important moment in the anime, though it is devoid of action. Ando, Shishigami's friend and now Mr. Inuyashiki's helper, praised Mr. Inuyashiki as a hero. Mr. Inuyashiki replied that he is not a hero, but is simply doing the right thing. This reminds me of what Albert Camus conveyed in his story, The Plague. The city of Oran was struck by an epidemic and some people organized sanitary squads to help control the spread of the disease. In such a time of crisis, Camus believed that one must act without fanfare, heroics, and in solidarity with others. One of the characters in his story, Dr. Riel, could have left the city before it was sealed off, but he declined to, instead remaining in Oran to fight the plague with his medical skills. He too denied the label of hero, saying, "There's no question of heroism at all. It's a matter of common decency." Thank you.